Welcome to Ordinary Teachers and Students, where we get to hear teachers and students tell us their extraordinary stories. My hope is that through this podcast, ordinary teachers from around the world can relate to the stories they hear and get some timely suggestions and ideas. My name is Alan Cheung, and I'm a life coach as well as a university lecturer. My vision is to make life coaching a part of every school. Today, I'm delighted to invite William Cheung onto the podcast. I taught William in my first year of teaching, and he actually left our school a few years later, but we somehow stayed in touch, even after he went to the UK to study. So he's currently a GP pharmacist in the UK. Apparently, he's also known as the honest pharmacist. Let's find out why. So welcome, William.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us more about the honest pharmacist? What's that about?
Yeah, so the idea was actually to try to do a podcast as well, though. So I was trying to,
right.
because I work in a hospital setting at that moment of my life. So I met a lot of different doctors, nurses and other people. And I always wonder what makes them sort of go on that path, though, and what brings them to that level at the this moment, though. So I was trying to start a podcast and ask them, how do they get there, what they like, what they don't like in their work and stuff like that. So it becomes the honest way of explaining their life.
So you were gonna name it Honest Pharmacist, right? The podcast name.
The interview with the honest pharmacist.
That's interesting.
I then switched my priority, and I didn't really work on it anymore.
Well, making a podcast is fun, like I always tell people. So I hope you can make it one day. Do you want to add anything more to the intro? So do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself or anything else that you think I missed out?
I think the first thing that I noticed is that you mentioned we somehow stay in touch. But I want to emphasize, I want to emphasize the fact that it's like a collaborative effort, though.
It has been,
and it's a very precious thing as well. I think it's a really great friendship that I value a lot, though. Yeah, because I find it quite strange, not quite strange, but more precious in a way that it's quite rare to see teachers and pupils and the students form a friendship, though, especially in sort of like Asian teaching.
I would say one interesting thing was because I think you left Hong Kong to the UK when you're quite young, right? And the fact that you only came back, I think, during maybe holidays. And then so when you made an effort to reach out, I think that was what helped, because if you think about it, like, so if people I taught from your year, we were kind of still in the same school, so they would never ever reach out to me and say, oh, let's have lunch together or let's meet or anything. And so I think you'd had a big part to play in the whole thing to make sure that we stayed in touch. But no, it's been great to keep in touch with you. And do you want to paint us a picture in terms of your schooling then? So maybe take us back to your primary school life first. Like, what do you remember of it, and describe it for us a little bit?
My primary school life, I do remember at one point, my primary school life sort of finished very early in the day, though. So I can't remember. Yeah, is it like a half-day schooling system?
And
so
then eventually,
I'm exposing my age now. No, so at one point I remember it finished so early, and then eventually when I get to secondary school, it then finished sort of longer and longer. And I think when I was in primary school, I feel like I'm not sure is it true though, but I feel like I learned more than secondary school though, in terms of the fact that your sort of attention span sort of shorten when your school days go longer though. So
and also I guess the growth, right? So I guess when you're younger, particularly when you're primary school, you feel like you're learning much quicker because like you're almost like getting new information every day. Whereas in secondary school, obviously you're older and you already have a bank of information there already.
Yeah, that's quite right though. Yeah.
How would you describe it in general? Like, were you kind of happy with it? Did you like it?
I would still say I like secondary sort of school life more if I compare to primary school, though. I think there's quite a lot of changes when I start going to secondary school, though. So as you mentioned, though, you taught me when I was first in form 1, form
Yeah.
2
Mm.
in the school that we met, and then I changed to another school in Hong
Yep.
Kong and
Yep.
for 3 years, and then I moved to
Mm.
UK. So
Mm.
there's like
Mm.
another
Mm.
2 years of A levels, and then I go to uni. So
Mm.
there's a lot of changes though. But then,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, compared to primary school where I just stay 6 years in the same
Yeah.
place,
Yeah. Yeah.
the changes I feel like that makes me learn a lot more as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to tell me more about the changes then? So,
Mm,
I'm curious, like when you first changed your secondary school. So, I think you were secondary three. Was it secondary three or secondary two
yeah. Oh, yeah. Well
ish?
remember.
Right.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. How does it feel like? Because I've been, I don't know whether I should call it lucky or unlucky. So I've always stayed in the same school,
Mm,
for like primary school and then for secondary school. And so I haven't experienced these kind of changes. But as a
uh,
teacher, I've had students who come in, like, let's say in form three or in form four, where the whole environment's new, all the classmates kind of
mm,
already know each other. And then you feel like
mm.
a bit of an outsider. So I don't know if that was how you felt, or how was the transition for you then?
That did happen when I first changed my school
Mm.
the first time.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
when I go to my second school, I do
Mm,
feel a bit like outsiders. So everyone
mm,
knows each other. They they have long friendships already,
yeah.
and I just come out from nowhere, and
Mm, mm,
yeah, that did make me quite lonely at that time though. But then eventually, once you sort of get moving to one place and another place,
mm.
then the good thing about that is that you do meet a lot of great people though,
Yep,
and
yep,
when you meet different people you always learn from them though. So some people may know something better,
yep,
and the more people you met, you just sort of soak in more knowledge and more
yep, yep.
skills though. So in that way that's a good
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, as you
Mm,
mentioned, sometimes it can be quite challenging when you join a new place and new
mm.
people, and yeah.
Yeah, when you join a new place, do you think it's a matter of time? Like, so you just
Mm.
let kind of see how it goes and wait to integrate within the school? Or do you think there was anything that people did? Like, was there a friend or a teacher who particularly helped you in that transition, do you feel? If
Oh,
you still remember.
I do remember there was one point when I first moved to new schools,
Mm,
and there was one, I think there was my class teacher as well though. So she was quite
mm, mm,
proactive in trying to talk to
mm.
me, to communicate and see how am I getting on,
Yep, 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 yep.
and yeah, and see if there's anything she can help though. And that the fact that she sort of go an extra miles to help
Mm.
me, and that is one thing that I still respect her a lot
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
for
sure
though.
that helped
Yeah.
a lot at that time. And then moving
Mm.
on to the second transition, so moving from Hong Kong to the UK, then do you want to tell us a little bit more about, like, kind of how that was? It must have been quite different, obviously, studying in the UK compared to Hong Kong.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was quite a scary thing to do. I still remember one day when I was still in the school in Hong Kong, trying to walking back home, and I was looking back at the school. It was
Mm.
like an emotional scene in the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
But yeah,
Totally
but and
imagine
I
it.
was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I was like, oh, I'm gonna leave this place for good now. I'm not gonna coming
Mm,
back into this school anymore. And would I regret it? Would I
mm,
is that the right decision to make, and stuff like
mm,
that. But then when I
mm,
get there, um, the fact that there's still a lot of nice people there, and then when I
mm,
moved to
mm,
UK, and there's a lot more extra curriculums time,
mm, mm,
and that's
mm.
one of the things that I think I quite enjoy when I was in UK. Though I was trying to do something that I never done in Hong Kong. I was trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do yeah, mountain cycling,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, like canoeing and stuff. So it was quite a nice time there. Though. Obviously,
Mm,
I
mm.
do study. Though I don't just do and play games every day and stuff. Though,
No,
yeah,
I
but
was going to ask you about the kind of compare or contrast the
mm,
studying environment. How do you feel about the two then? So, having been in both, what would
mm.
you say are the kind of like pros and cons of both systems?
One of the great things that I do notice was that in Hong Kong, I feel like I'm forced to learn something. So,
Mm,
I go to school and I have so many knowledge I have to put into my
yeah,
brain. And the teacher
yeah.
always say something like, "Oh, our class is running late now. We are like
Mm,
2 chapter, 3 chapters behind now."
right,
So that you
right.
keep on, filling up a lot of information each day.
Mm,
And then after school, I still need to go to like extra revision
yeah.
classes, and like yeah, that's just like a constant constant
Mm,
studying. There's nothing left in life. Though. It gives
mm,
me a
mm,
feeling. But then in the
mm,
UK, when I was studying there, it then feels like a personal responsibility for me to learn myself though.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
despite the time of learning isn't actually as much as in Hong Kong though, I
Yep.
feel like I self-learn a lot more, and I'm
Mm,
more
mm.
keen to do the learning when compared to Hong Kong.
That's so interesting. That's fascinating to me because as a
Mm.
teacher, I'm maybe thinking, do you feel that maybe in Hong Kong the teachers care a bit too much? Like it's almost like they they take up all the responsibility of the learning that it
Mm.
makes you kind of feel like, oh, it's just the teacher who cares more than me kind of thing. Do you feel that's the case?
Sometimes actually, yeah. Now you say about it, because you feel like they are trying to force you
Mm,
to learn something and do well in exams. So obviously not every teacher, but then I feel like when I was in UK, then they sort of teach you, and whether you learn it or not, it's sort of
mm.
totally your choice. Though, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So it's your
yeah,
responsibility. Yeah.
yeah,
That's fascinating. And that kind of reminds me of like different parenting styles as well. Well,
mm,
that's kind of that paints a lovely picture of kind of what's happened to
mm,
you in your school life.
mm.
Um, anything else that we've missed out in terms of knowing who you are?
I think that's more like it. Though I'm trying to,
Maybe one
yeah.
more question from me then.
Hmm.
What made you choose pharmacy then? Or was it something that you've always wanted to do?
No, no, definitely not. Though. So I remember when I was young, I
Yep.
wanted to be a taxi driver.
Oh, oh, that's interesting. Tell me
Yeah, so
more. Tell me more. Yeah.
I remember it was summer, in
Yep.
summertime. Um, there were days where it was really hot though, and I was like, oh, the taxi drivers are quite nice. They drive
Oh.
to wherever they can, and they have air conditioning in their cars. I
That's
was like, oh,
brilliant.
they can stay in the cold temperature for the whole day. Though. I was so jealous at that time.
Okay. So that's your
Uh,
number one goal, right?
yeah, and then I want to be a Lego designer because
Mm,
as a kid I like Legos, and then eventually obviously Asian parents they always want you to be a doctor, a
mm,
lawyer. So my parents do want me to try to be a doctor,
mm,
and I remember I went to a shadowing program, and I noticed the responsibility of a doctor is just
mm.
huge though,
Yep.
and sometimes they have to stay late for their job as well. And I was like, I do remember this strong feeling of the work life balance though, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, I don't really want to be a doctor. And then
Mm,
my
mm,
parents are
mm.
nurses, so they are like, oh, nurses can be
Ah, yeah,
quite,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
quite
Mm,
a lot of hard work though. So I sort
yep.
of choose somewhere in between.
That's interesting
Mm.
because the fact that you said your parents are nurses, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The fact that they already work within that industry
Mm,
and they kind of
mm,
know how stressful it is to be a doctor, but they still kind of push you
mm.
towards that direction, right?
Yeah, well.
Were they satisfied with your decision though, or did they
Hmm.
try to like persuade you? Oh, how about keep pursuing the dream of their dream of you becoming a doctor?
Um, I I think they didn't really push too hard though, actually.
Okay,
So
yep,
yeah, when I told them about my experience in the shadowing program, they are
yep.
like, "Well, fine, and just do whatever you want." Then.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I really respect that because like
Mm,
there are students I think I've shared with you before. There are
mm,
students where even at university they're still studying something that their parents want them to study, and they
mm,
might end up becoming a doctor. They might end up working as a doctor, but then somewhere
mm,
down the line they'll realize, oh, I'm not actually living my own life, right? I'm living the life that my parents want me
mm.
to live, and then
Yeah,
they might just end up like just giving up and doing something else. But
yeah.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. If we move on to the main part of the podcast, then, so this is the part
Mm,
where you can choose a topic, anything related to education that we can talk a little bit more about. So,
mm.
what was it that you wanted to talk about?
So it was a question for yourself. Though. So now that you sort of get to this stage of life,
Yep.
what sort of knowledge or skills or things that you wish they sort of teach in schools when you are still back in school that you find very useful and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
essential these
yeah,
days?
yeah. I see you're trying to turn
Yeah.
the table on me and interview me on my own podcast.
Yeah. I can be the host
No,
now.
but no, it's an interesting question to ask. Like, kind
Mm,
of, so the question of what should schools be teaching that
mm.
maybe haven't been taught before. I think if I kind of start it off, given that you did ask the question, I'll politely answer. So, but hopefully you'll contribute a lot more too. But I think
Mm,
one thing that maybe isn't covered enough in the school curriculum is like emotional management, because I
Okay.
feel that it when you are kind of older and when you go through different phases of your life, one big
Mm,
part is really how well you control your emotions. And
mm,
if I give an example, so like for
yeah.
me,
Mm,
going through different jobs and applying for jobs, so I'm sure people will resonate with this. If you've applied for jobs before, it's very frustrating, right? You send off loads of resumes and application
mm,
letters, and you might have to redo each application letter,
mm,
and it's a long process, right? And then you can feel defeated, and you can very
mm,
quickly feel like, oh, I'm a bit of a no one, no one wants me, and then it could
mm,
spiral down very quickly. So that's why I feel
mm,
that emotional management, knowing how to control your emotions and knowing how to focus what you can focus on and what you can control, I think is such an important skill that I wouldn't say is not taught, but maybe it's not emphasized enough at school. Yeah.
I do
So
agree though. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't remember sort of anyone mentioning more about the mental, emotional side of
yeah.
yeah, of sort of personal growth
Yep.
though.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
So
quite right.
given that you asked this question,
Mm.
were there things that you felt weren't covered which you feel are important skills right now in your own life?
I did thought about that as well though, because I know you're
Mm.
gonna ask me back.
Yeah, of
so,
course, I'll turn the
so
table back
yeah.
on you.
so I think it's the skills of self-learning actually.
Mm.
So yeah, so
Mm.
it sort of resonates back to where what we are talking earlier though. So
Yep.
instead of the teacher feeding all the information to you, can yourself learn something that you want to learn
Mm.
though, and something that you feel that's important for you. Because I
Mm.
feel like as I grow older and the more people I meet, uh, one thing that I usually hear from them is the fact that, oh, I am a someone, so I don't have this skill set, so I can't do something.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
but then that's not quite true though, because if you really want to do something, you can actually apply the same learning and just expertise in that field as
Yeah.
well though. Say
Yeah.
say some say like myself, if
Mm.
I say I can say something like, oh, I'm a pharmacist, I don't have IT skills, I
Mm.
can't build websites, but then
Mm.
it's more like an excuse instead of a
Yeah.
truth though, because yeah,
So
you can
true.
learn
Yeah.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
So
think
true.
that's one thing that I feel, if back in school time, if someone can empower us
Mm.
in with this mindset saying that you can learn
Mm.
anything yourself, I feel like a lot
Mm.
of great people can do a lot more great things.
Yeah, yeah, actually, it's such a really good point. Actually, I had two questions
Mm.
related to that. So maybe the
Oh,
first question I wanted to ask you was, have
mm.
you heard of the growth mindset before? Like there's a
The,
theory from psychology called the growth mindset.
not quite, not quite. I
Okay,
don't
so
think so.
if I just very briefly describe it, so I'm a
Mm.
big fan of it. So basically, the
Mm.
idea is that there's both a growth and a fixed mindset. So if we start with the
Mm.
fixed mindset first, that's the easiest one.
Mm.
So the fixed mindset is the where people believe that, oh, I'm born to be good at or bad at certain things.
Mm.
So the typical example I normally use is art. So many people know that I'm not very good at art. So you might say I have
Same.
a bit of a fixed mindset on art. So whenever I need to do art, right, I feel like, oh, it doesn't
Mm.
matter how much I try, doesn't really matter even if I try to learn it.
Mm.
I'm not born to be very good at art, therefore I will never be good at art. So that's a very fixed
Mm.
mindset way of thinking things, right? So a
Mm.
growth mindset is obviously the opposite, where you believe that with the right effort, with the right strategies, so someone helping you, maybe someone
Mm.
coaching you or guiding you, you can get good at anything you want to do in life. And so
Mm.
that's the idea of growth mindset. So to have a more growth mindset towards my art, it'll be thinking, oh, okay, let me try to learn new techniques. Let me find someone to give me some new strategies to learn. And so that's
Mm.
the idea. And so I feel that what you said about self-learning
Mm.
really is kind of really reflecting that idea of the growth and fixed mindset. Because like you said, many people they might take on a certain job or occupation
Mm.
and then they start to develop a fixed mindset towards other things, right? So
Mm.
pretty much like you said, right? I'm a pharmacist, therefore I don't need to be good at IT,
Mm.
and I will maybe never ever get good at IT. So that's what it is.
Mm.
The second question I was going to ask you was, do you feel that during your school life you had a chance to really explore this idea of self-learning, or have a chance to like use different ways to learn something that wasn't kind of given to you in a typical like subject manner, if you see what I mean, like kind of just, oh, the teacher tells you
Uh,
to do this, you try it, and then you just write it up.
um, Yeah, I don't feel like I have much of the sort of exposure of this
Mm,
this aspect though. So yeah, I feel like when I try to learn something, say like
mm,
a chapter or like a
mm,
um um something that in books, then the
mm,
only way that I can learn it is through lessons or
mm.
my extra learning course. So I
Yep.
wouldn't feel like, oh, I can read something else, I can do some
Mm.
other research or to learn it. So yeah, it's quite fixed. So yeah, so
Yeah, yeah.
hmm.
I'm curious then, like, so when in your life did you start feeling like, oh, wait, I can actually learn anything I want to?
I think that's when I actually start working, and I do
Yep,
go from jobs to jobs as well. And
yep,
I think what really helps me was to actually meet someone who are older than me, though.
yep,
So they are in different stages of life, and
yep,
they learn something that they learn, they pick up from a point in their life, and they try to share with you, and they say like, oh, and they advise you to read some books and stuff
yep.
like that. And at that point, I then realized that, oh, I can do more than what I thought I could do though. So I can learn these skills, I can learn that thing,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
and yeah,
yeah.
it's all depending on yourself though. If you actually
Mm,
want to learn it, you can do it. Yeah.
very
So
true.
yeah, at that point, then yeah, I then realized that, oh, not everyone should feed you information, and you should feed yourself.
Yeah, yeah, very true, very
Mm.
true. And are there any things that you're learning quite recently?
Oh yeah, so obviously I'm trying to learn the IT skills to try to build the landing page that I was trying to build for my business. So
Mm,
it hasn't
so
been successful yet,
okay,
but
okay.
yeah, it's quite useful to find out that you can actually learn everything basically from YouTube. So and also
Very
some,
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's quite funny though, because when you look at something, you're like, there's no way I can do it, but it could only just be a video,
Mm,
sort of in between that you don't know and now, so process.
mm,
Yeah, you're
mm,
just
mm.
one video away from what you want to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Well,
that's one thing I'm learning.
I just a follow-up question to that. Like, given that
Mm.
we can pretty much learn anything from YouTube, like really
Mm.
literally anything, right? What do you
Yeah.
think the role is of for teachers then? Like, do we still need teachers? Like from a student's perspective. Like,
Ah.
obviously for me, of course, I still feel we need teachers, right? But for you, like,
Mm.
what's the role of teachers then?
um I think then it comes back down to, you don't for many people, you don't know what you don't know though, and you don't know what you need
Mm,
to
mm,
grow
mm,
up to that stage though, which is something that I was thinking about the other day as well though, when I was
mm.
listening to your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Because when you go to school, teachers and the education system, they try to prepare you
Mm,
to become self-sufficient in the future though, and trying
mm,
to build you up to prepare for the your
mm,
future, the societies and work though. So the question that I was thinking was, then how do you know what to prepare for these
mm,
children
mm,
though? Like what we don't know about the future, what was it
mm.
gonna hold, or say like AI is happening now, and
Yeah,
there's so many different new stuff. Then how do we prepare the children to be ready
yep,
for all of this though?
yeah, yeah.
So obviously teachers, when they are living in sort of different stage of life, then it's
Mm,
similar to what I said earlier though, when you
yeah.
meet someone a bit older, then they can teach you something that from the experience though,
Mm,
which
mm,
in
mm.
that way it does help as well. But
Yep, yep.
obviously um a person, when you have someone who can sort of push you a little bit to
Mm,
learn, which is one of the role of teacher, I think it does help as well though.
sure,
Because
sure.
yeah, obviously a lot of people, they may do self-learning though, but then there are people who aren't doing self-learning as well though. So I do
Mm,
feel it's still compulsory to have teachers to actually push that knowledge learning process though.
yeah, sure. And
Mm.
so apart from self-learning, were there other skills that you had in mind which you felt, I think school should cover more of this, or
Mm.
maybe that there were things that you feel like right now super
Mm.
useful to you, but they were never really talked about much in school.
Um That related to a book that I was reading recently, though. So it's the communication skills to other people, though, actually. So obviously, in schools, you have, say 20, 30 people in the same
Yeah.
class, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can get well with all the other people, though, and you may not actually build how the way how you talk to people, though. So
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
the thing that the book that I was listening, they emphasize active listening. And
Yes. Yes.
yeah, how do
Mm.
you sort of teach students? Do you do that in a class where only one teacher is talking most of the time, and say like even in recess, only a few
Yeah.
people are sort of
Yeah.
taking the spotlight of the whole
Yeah.
class? So you
Yeah.
don't. I feel like this is so important in the sort of later stage of lives, though, when you talk to a lot of people.
Mm. Mm, mm,
Yeah,
mm,
but
mm.
then it wasn't quite emphasized back in the time.
It's such a good point because I feel
Mm,
that actually, even for teachers, I think
mm,
that within our own training, I
mm,
guess we kind of briefly talk about it. We
mm.
understand how important active listening is, but it wasn't until I trained to become a life coach that I realized, oh, wait,
Mm,
there's like listening at another level. I think I've said this on a few other podcast episodes that
mm,
I've recorded. It's just because when you want to show empathy to other people, like you
mm,
really need to learn how to listen properly rather than trying to
mm,
listen to respond and to give your own take on the situation kind of thing. So I think that's
mm.
such a really good point. So thank you for those 2 points. Anything else that we haven't mentioned that you feel are important in terms of skills that should be covered in education, or was were those the points that you had in mind? So you talked about self-learning and then
Yeah.
communication skills.
I think that's more it at the moment.
Cool, cool. Are you ready to
Mm.
move on to the quick fire questions then?
Oh, okay.
You should be very
Hmm.
familiar because I know you're a big fan of the podcast, so you listen to most of the podcast episodes, right? So,
Yeah.
so how did teachers describe you back then?
I would say it's still similar to what you say last time. I remember when we meet up at one point,
Yeah,
and you did mention that, I was like a polite and
yeah, yeah,
hardworking student. Yeah, I think that's still
yeah,
the
yeah.
case. Though,
I will
yeah, so
also
maybe.
add honest as well.
Thank you. That's helpful.
What should actually you might have answered this already. What should
Hmm.
schools or teachers do more of? So we talked kind of a little bit about it just now, but anything else that you had in mind in terms of what should
Mm,
schools or teachers do more of to help students?
I think if they, uh, which actually connects to your mentoring program, though, because I was
Mm,
thinking,
mm,
when you have so many
yeah.
students in one class, it's quite hard
Mm,
to really help each of them, though, because each of them
mm,
has everyone has their own ambition, they have their
yeah,
own
yeah, yeah.
goals, and obviously everyone trying to pass the exams, which is
Mm,
a shared goal, though. But then if you want to help someone a bit further, I feel like if we were back in school, we have like a
mm,
personal supervisor, a personal tutor,
yeah,
or
yeah,
like a
yeah.
life coach, like
Mm,
person,
mm,
then that would be quite helpful, though. Yeah,
sure. How about doing less of?
doing less. One tiny thing, though, is I think that they should stop saying like, "Oh, we are so many chapters delay in our process and stuff." I thought about it, and I was like, it doesn't help anyone. Though you say that, and then you sort of demotivate your
Yeah,
students, and then
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Unfortunately, I do
Mm.
know many teachers who do that, and
Mm.
they almost fall into a trap of like teaching the curriculum rather than teaching the students, right?
Yeah,
So they
that's
just
quite
feel
right.
that, oh, once I've completed the curriculum, then I feel
Mm.
that I've done my job kind of thing. Yeah, it's very unfortunate. Yeah, you're right. Thank you
Yeah,
for raising that.
but I suppose that it then shows what their goals of teaching is, though. So
Yep,
are they trying to just to deliver what they have to be, or do they are they really trying to prepare the students
very
for
true.
them to
Yeah,
be?
yeah. What
Hmm.
was there any activities or tools that you felt really helped you learn while you were in school?
Um. Hmm. I think YouTube would be one place again, though,
Yeah,
but that
yeah,
comes of later in life
yeah,
in
yeah,
my
yeah,
studying career,
yeah,
where
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're trying to revise for exams, and then those YouTube
Mm.
short videos of summarize everything that
Mm.
comes in
Yeah,
a
fair
great
enough.
help,
Yeah,
though. Yeah.
yeah, 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 sure. And
Mm.
were there any funny or strange, scary, touching moments from your own school life that you wanted to share?
Hmm. I can't think of any at the moment, though, but
No, that's okay. I mean, it's been quite a long time since your
Mm-mm.
own. Not, I'm not calling you old, but it's been
Thank,
quite a
thank
couple of
you.
years. No worries.
Yeah.
If nothing comes to mind, that's fine. Do
Mm.
you have a question for me? You already asked your question, so you've kind of used your quota as a guest already. But I'll allow you
Ah.
to ask one more question just because I'm very nice to you.
Do you remember that I had a question that I was thinking of, but I can't remember at the moment.
Oh,
Uh,
you're gonna lose the
yeah.
chance.
Oh no. Let me come back to you if I actually remember before the podcast ends.
No problem at all.
Mm.
Maybe one more question in terms of quick fire. Just
Mm.
anything that you would change about your school life, like anything that you would change in terms of how you approached it.
I think I would definitely spend more time in extracurriculums instead of focusing all my time into studying, though. Because
Mm, mm, mm,
what I feel like is when I do those extracurriculums activities, say like a
mm,
sport or like an art or skills, I feel
mm.
like it's more it actually enriched my life a lot more than just learning, because
Yeah.
you can do so much learning, and the thing that you learn, I don't I can't say that, but I don't feel like it applies that much to the later life though. But
Mm,
whereas if you do some sort of activities and learn the skills and you have the muscle memories of doing that,
mm,
that plays a bigger role in your
mm,
future life
mm,
though. So
mm,
so yeah,
mm.
I if I could change it, I would definitely spend lesser time
Yeah.
to study in class. I don't think my parents will agree though, but
Hopefully they won't listen to the podcast, right?
yeah, funny.
Right. And a final question from me then. So any
Mm.
teachers you remember vividly, so for good or bad reasons? And normally I
Mm.
remind the students that if they are bad reasons, then you don't need to say their names. Or you, I mean, you
Obviously, you
can.
you will be one of them though, because we keep in touch for so long though,
Mm,
and
mm, mm,
that yeah, that was a really nice relationship and friendship that we had though. But
mm.
one teacher that I do always remember was a biology teacher of myself back
Yeah.
in when I was doing A levels in UK.
Ah, okay.
So he has quite a few roles though. So he was my biology teacher.
Yeah.
So, and then he is also my mountain biking coach,
Oh,
sort of like
right.
a
Yeah,
team
yeah, yeah,
leader.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
he is also my my sort of accommodation housemaster.
Oh,
So
right. Okay. Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so he has quite a few roles yeah
Mm, mm,
in my
mm, mm,
school life though, and I always remember that he teaches with passion, so he
yeah,
make the
yeah.
lesson fun, and he tried to go extra steps to help students to understand what
Mm,
he's teaching, and he and when we are in cycling, he also
mm.
motivate me and try to encourage me to
Yeah, yeah.
cycle quicker and stuff like that.
Mm,
So
mm, mm.
I feel like he teach me a lot in academically, but
Yeah,
then also
yeah.
um yeah in the sport and skills wise.
Like
So
personal
so yeah,
development, right?
yeah, and it's interesting because he is actually 60ish, but he is still
Oh,
cycling and doing
right. Yeah, yeah,
exercise a
yeah,
lot.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so yeah, it is
No,
quite a
yeah, that's
mm,
something I tell teachers a lot. Like when you teach with passion, I think students do feel it by themselves. Like you can feel the
mm,
difference between passionate teachers and those who are not as passionate or who don't really care too much about their students. So yeah, thank you for
yeah,
sharing that.
definitely,
And
yeah.
if you're able to keep in touch or send this podcast link to him later, hopefully you might give it a try.
Oh,
I think it'd be
well, that's
really
a good
nice for him
idea.
to listen to the podcast, right?
Yeah, yeah. If he's a teacher,
Yeah.
then yeah, it would be nice to spread the nice podcast.
And so this is your last chance to ask me the question that can you think of it or
hmm.
not? Otherwise, I'm gonna wrap up.
Uh, what was that? Mm.
Clearly not very important, right?
Nah, it was quite interesting though, but I just can't remember it for some reason. But
There you go.
I think I have another small question that
Okay,
I can
go for
think
it.
of. So,
Yep.
um, as a yeah, I remember now. Oh, I remember
Okay.
now. Okay, that's
Yep.
so as a teacher,
Yep.
when you meet students, do you then sort of think in mind of what they will be in the future? They'll say for example,
Mm.
say like if you see a student who are they don't care about studying, they don't care about anything, would you think like, oh, he's gonna not doing well in the
Yeah, yeah.
future?
It's an
Yeah.
interesting question. Yeah.
And the second part of this question is just what were your expectations for me? Though?
Yeah,
did
yeah.
I did I did did my future sort of did what I'm doing now sort of is the same as what you
Yeah,
expect?
yeah. I would say for you, because I only taught you when you were like really, really young. So I probably at that
Mm,
time it didn't have any particular expectation. I think these expectations normally come towards when you're about to leave secondary school. So as in like
mm,
when I'm teaching students, particularly those who I teach for 3 years in a row. So you know normally
mm,
how you teach Form 4 to Form 6, you might be the
mm.
class teacher and you do a lot of careers counseling. So you kind of get an idea
Oh.
of what they want to do
Mm.
and what they might do. And of course, there are some students who might come up with an occupation where I feel, are you really suited? Like if we take teaching, right? So I've
Mm,
had students who said, "Oh, I want to be a teacher," and then when
mm.
I think, "Oh, yeah, like they're not the best behaved," but well, let's say this: some of the worst behaved students might actually turn out to
Okay.
be really good teachers, right? But
Oh.
sometimes you do have certain expectations, but I think over
Mm,
time I've learned to not have as many of these expectations or not to judge
mm.
because I've
Right.
had like the longer I've taught, the more students I've had come out to work and actually like take
Mm,
on different roles in society, right? And then,
mm.
like I said, some students have become teachers and they've surprised me. Like for example, that class you were in, I don't know if you remember, there was one
Uh-huh.
girl who went to participate in the Miss Hong Kong contest. So I would never have guessed that.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I
so
do remember now.
so I mean,
Mm,
I've learned over time not to judge and not to have expectations. And actually, that's one of the most fascinating things about teaching: the fact
mm,
that you get to see a student grow and become like an adult, and then to see what
mm,
happens later is really fascinating. So I think it's a
mm.
great question. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
And so I would just want to thank you again for coming onto the podcast. I think one common theme that you've really outlined is your passion for learning. So throughout the
Mm,
conversation, everything that we've talked about, it we can feel like how much you treasure the experience of learning. And
mm.
that's kind of why you probably brought up the idea that we need to learn to become self-learning. Like, oh, no, that doesn't
Mm,
really make sense as a sentence, but what I mean by that is like kind of lifelong learning is so important
mm,
for everyone, like to keep learning and to keep believing that you are able to still learn new skills, no matter
mm.
how old you are, no matter what industry you go into. And so I
Yeah.
think you really demonstrated that in terms of what you're doing right now. And you always
Thank you.
ask me lots of different questions about lots of different things too. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
No, thank you for having me as well. It was really nice to have such a nice conversation.
William shared with us the different transitions he went through as a student, and I was so impressed with how he focused on the learning that he got from each situation he was in. He also posed a really important question for us to ponder. What are the skills that we want our students to get from education that are critical to adult life? How do we help them become lifelong learners and to pick up communication skills such as active listening during their time at school? I hope you enjoyed listening to William's extraordinary story, and please do join us again next time on Ordinary Teachers and Students.